everyone. We're back here live in the Venetian for Qualis's QSC 2022 conference. I hope you've enjoyed our first morning of coverage. This is our first interview after lunch. I want to introduce you to Frank Dixon of IDC. Frank, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on. Actually, why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay. All right. Yeah. So I'm Frank Dixon. I lead the security practice at IDC. So the technical economy group vice president, which means I run a team of 19 to 20 different people, covering everything from network security and firewalls, all through risk and compliance and trust. I mean, we cover the gamut. 20 people can do a lot.
Absolutely. That's a huge research team. You know, network security and firewalls, that
they still exist, though. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
You know what? It's become relevant again.
Yeah.
Network security. It really has. I mean, for so long we were so focused on AppSec, but we're starting. Data is becoming important again.
Yes.
Data security and network security.
Yeah, we actually, so in about the 2018 timeframe, we started articulating what we thought were the 4 new control points of digital transformation, right? Mm-hmm. So we talk about endpoint security, right? Because we saw, if everything is encrypted, you can't see anything, right? And so you're going to have to be able to apply security where things are not encrypted, where you can see and where you can implement something. So we said the endpoint's going to be important. We talked about application security, right? If all our applications are moving out of the data center and then going to the cloud, AppSec becomes important, especially as you start moving to SaaS. So there was a second point. Third one, right? Data. You mentioned it, right? That's what everyone's trying to get to. And then the fourth one, which it's funny, one of my first presentations at IDC, 6-7 years ago, was identity is the new perimeter. Guess what?
It still is.
It's still the
it's the black dress.
It's like a friend of mine went to the Share farewell tour, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to the Share farewell tour." And my other buddy goes, "Well, I went to that tour 5 years ago."
The same thing with the Elton John.
Yeah.
But how apropos for being in Vegas.
Yeah. We take a long time to say goodbye,
Absolutely.
right? And so, yeah. So
they like the money too.
Yeah.
But if you don't mind, let's dive in on this identity thing for a second.
Sure.
So lately, the last couple of years, I call it IAM because that's what identity and access management.
Absolutely.
But what I've seen in the last year is sort of identity and access being bifurcated. Okay, first let me prove you're Frank, and that's a whole different. That's one set of facts, proving you're really Frank.
Right.
Now that I know you're Frank, where do I want you to go and want to, from the zero trust to the whole thing, what are you going to have access to, what data and everything else? And where it used to be identity and access were joined at the hip, I see it kind of breaking out, where just because, there's a separate control plane, if you will, for your access from your identity. And it may be because where you're at, you're accessing stuff all over the place, right? Third-party SaaS apps and cloud and here and data and.
So it was a really great observation. I was pausing for a second to let your concept breathe because you're exactly right. We talk about identity, and the first thing we do is go, MFA.
Right.
MFA is great. I'm not
no, I'm
you're not doing MFA, but yes, there is a separate plane about access, and there's also the really, really, really smart people are not just talking about access, they're talking about authorization and authorization platforms and how we're authorizing. And as we talk about, and so a lot of the issue that we deal with identity is that identity lived in this cluster over here. It was an identity person, and we left them alone because it was ugly. And let's face it, identity has not been well maintained. So we talk about directories.
Passwords and directories, right.
Yeah, and so it's not maintained, lifecycle management.
It was the hidden Microsoft monopoly.
Right. But I'd almost add a third piece to your triangle. So as you're talking about, you're right. There is this whole issue of are we authenticating to that directory, right? In some of the smart people actually talking about proofing that identity to make sure we are who we say we are, right? And so once we get to that directory, how do we manage that? And then once we manage that, how do we authorize it? There's another context now, and it's that need of security people to ingest identity context to be talking about threat mitigation, right? And so if we look at a really basic example, right? One of the key trends now is living off the land attacks, right? We're not going to use any malware. We're just going to use PowerShell or Cobalt Strike or Mimikatz.
Yep.
Like all legitimate applications that we use maliciously. Well, a PowerShell script, I don't know if that's benign or malicious, unless I know the identity context.
So I was going to say, it could be both.
It
It
could be both.
It's Schrodinger's cat.
Depending upon, like if I'm an IT
who's
administrator and I'm using it, yes. And so we're seeing a lot of cybersecurity companies now either buying identity companies or launching identity features.
Yeah.
Right, this event, right, Qualys, they've launched a whole bunch of identity-centric features, not for the identity folks, but for the security folks, right? We're going to apply identity context, and it's a quiet movement, but it's big, and it's just getting rolling.
Powerful, and
yes.
It is. I agree with you, and I think this goes to what I was talking about, this bifurcation.
Yeah.
So you heard it here from Frank Dixon first. Finally, the year of identity is coming. Finally.
It wasn't
We've been
2016,
talking
it's
about it.
2023. Yeah.
It wasn't 2010, but it's coming.
It's coming.
Let's talk a little bit more about the Qualys thing.
Sure.
You mentioned the areas. Look, endpoint. I'm of an age, you're a contemporary. There was a time where I was so soured on endpoint security that I virtually gave up on it. I'll be honest. I felt like, you know what, Microsoft's giving me free stuff. The Mac's pretty safe. I'm done playing with this bloated pigware they want me to put on the machine. Right? We went through that, and it doesn't work anyway. What does it really stop?
And here in Vegas, bloatware went to pigware, but okay. Good, we're good.
Well, I'm from New York, but anyway.
Love it.
But, with this whole XDR and EDR, we've seen a renaissance of endpoint security, I think.
Yes, okay. I think, so one of the things, it's funny. So we have this snarky comment we make when new things come out. We often talk about, okay, is this PowerPoint or is this product, right? And so I think for a long time, XDR was
no doubt
was PowerPoint. We just got done with a survey, and we were asking about ransomware. Okay, and so for your recent ransomware attack, how did you detect it? And we've actually run this 3 times. And so we asked about the tools. Well, about 6 months ago, there's all this potpourri of tools. 2 things in this recent swing happened. One was we saw this massive increase in terms of the leveraging of SIM, EDR, NDR, and if you believe it or not, full PCAP solutions for detection of ransomware. And it was like weird because some of these other ones, like deception didn't change, or some of the other ones, like there's all these features. Like it's interesting that those kind of activity-centric tooling detected it. The second kind of thing that we noticed is, and I go, oh, it's kind of interesting. The math didn't seem to work for me for a second. And I was like, all these tools. And so I added up the number of tools per detection. And now all of a sudden the number of tools per detection went from 2.1 or 2.2 to 2.6, which means more tools, which is theoretically, and what is XDR? We're linking tools to come up with detections, right? And so I was like, they had this vaporware, but as you talk about endpoint solutions, once again, 4 new control points. How do you detect ransomware or any other without having visibility at the endpoint, right? And so I think that's a critical point. So yeah, I know she gave up on it, but come on back. Come on back.
I have. We've come back. Well, I'm talking. Look, I got a little pittance of a company, but we're on the XDR train, and the detection endpoint EDR train.
Yeah.
An interesting thing that it's funny, that survey you mentioned, I'm pretty sure Mike Vizard on our team must have interviewed someone because I remember reading about it on Security
Yeah,
Boulevard at some point.
yeah.
Um,
It's a
but
epic
it is.
study.
I mean, look, ransomware was probably one of the two big stories in 2022, I think, in security, along with maybe supply chain software.
I don't
Software
know.
supply chain?
I don't know if I necessarily.
No?
It's huge. It's a huge story. But like, here's like, so I went back. I actually wrote a report just because of the kind of that. So when did ransomware start? 1989.
Oh, it's been around forever.
Forever. And
Yes.
so we always talk about like, well, it was huge last year. Like, it was 50% as big last year, but it was 50% as big the year before, and 50%. And if you look at the ransomware, the ransoms, we've gone from like 2013, where the average ransom was about $150 to millions, and it didn't go like this, but it's
No,
all.
but for me, what happened, Frank? It became like Murder Inc. Right? It became like organized. The ransomware industry, if you will,
Yes.
not the
Yes.
solutions.
Yes.
The bad guys.
The bad guys.
They went corporate. I mean, they're organized, man.
They are. And,
know,
and,
this-
and, it- and the thing about ransomware, I think, that gets misunderstood is we talk about ransomware like it's software. It's not the ransomware. It's the attackers. To your
Good
point, it went corporate. And so it's all about, what we discovered is if we launch that ransomware when we're connected to a network store, like, people are going to pay.
Right.
So let's go find the network
Network
store,
store.
and let's go find the network store with the more money, and then let's exfiltrate the valuable data. Like, it's just like, they're not dumb. They're really smart,
But
clever
to me,
folks.
the whole concept of negotiating with terrorists and honor among thieves, right? So let's think about this. You, SOB, ransomed me.
Yes.
Right, well, or,
Yes.
encrypted all my crown jewels,
Yep.
and you're asking for money.
Yep.
Like a kidnapper, and you're going to send me my son's ear or finger to prove you have. Well, you don't have to, because I can see my stuff's all encrypted.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to trust you
Yeah.
to pay you the money,
Yeah.
and then you're going to unransomware me, or you're going
Yeah.
to unencrypt me, and I'm not worried about you leaving anything behind that's going to allow you to do it again. I'm not worried that maybe you downloaded a copy of it and sold it to the next bad guy to do something, and he sold it, and so on down this chain, of the bad guys. But it's okay. I'm going to write you a check for a couple $1,000,000 or hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
The whole thing to me is rotten, right? I feel like Al Pacino in Justice Row. The whole system is screwy. I don't know, but I don't have an answer. I hate to point to problems and not even have a clue on how you fix it. But the whole thing is crazy.
It is. And you point to some, like the last survey we did, 15% of the people that paid the ransom didn't get their data back. Didn't get their
Because
data
you're
back.
negotiating with terrorists.
Right.
And I'll tell you another thing that I see as a problem in the industry is that, hey, don't worry about it. Just get insurance. Let the insurance company worry about it.
Right.
I interviewed, I'm not going to name their name, but I interviewed one of the cyber insurance providers at RSA last year. And they were like, oh, we're the ransomware experts. If you get ransomware, don't even talk to them. Come to us. We know all the different gangs. We know what the going rate is. We'll make sure it gets done. And it's almost like, are you an insurance company or are you my ransomware negotiator?
Yes.
Because I don't think one's necessarily the other. But and that I'll say it on live. That's a shitty solution to ransomware.
Well,
saying, let the insurance guy worry about
it's
it.
a temporary solution, right?
I hope.
The one thing that we learn is that digital transformation, IT, business evolves faster than the protections. And so it'll evolve. Like, what are we talking about here? We're talking about how do we start evaluating risk? And
Yeah.
and it's interesting, because when you start talking about risk, you transform the whole conversation. Right? Now it's not about security, it's about risk. And what does risk mean? Risk implies an outcome, right? And risk implies a business outcome.
Decision.
And
Not
so
a-
now we can start elevating these conversations. So, hey, if I'm more secure, then theoretically my risk goes down, my premium should go down, right? So now also we got a cause and effect. I really think, as much as we as much as we want to hate the security industry, cyber insurance might be the tool that fuels us to mature our conversations from talking about security to talking about risk.
So I have a good friend, Alex Hutton. I don't know if you've ever met Alex. He was at Zion Bank, then I think he was at B of A, and I forget where Alex is now. What's the big risk group? It's a not-for-profit. You know who I'm talking. I
Probably,
can't
yeah.
remember their name this
Right.
second. But look, this is something we've been preaching in security
We have.
for a really long time, right? It's about security, cyber or infosec, whatever you want to call it, was about managing risk. It wasn't about making us that we never have an attack or that we never, you know what I mean? Yeah, we could unplug everything from the internet, not be connected, and hope we don't, you know.
But we're at fault. We are at fault, right? We talk about it's all about reducing risk. Okay, great.
But we don't manage to that.
We don't. What do? We go to our board of directors.
And we buy shiny new.
We buy shiny new toys and we go, hey, Mr. and Mrs. CEO, we addressed 4,000 alerts last month.
Pretty damn good.
Pretty damn good, yeah. And the CEO goes, am I safe? No. You don't understand.
I don't know.
I patched 4,000
Right.
vulnerabilities.
What does it mean, diddly?
What does it mean? What does it mean,
I know.
right? Risk isn't about a condition. Risk is about about an outcome, right? It's about am I safe? Like it allows the board to make the decision. So we need to start evolving it's our fault. Until we
Look, I hear you. You're preaching to the choir. It's why I sit on this side instead of that side.
Fair.
I had enough time on that side.
Fair.
But you know, that's a really hard question to answer because I've been at, you know, there was a time where we saw the business I started, 60% of our business was DOD and Fed kind of stuff. And I got asked that question a lot. Are we safe?
Right.
And I can't tell you if you're safe. All I can tell you is how we've managed the risk and your percentages are. But that's like asking, who's the guy? Nate Silver from the polling thing. Who's going to win the election? All he can tell you is, well, when I take all the polls and run them together, these are the chances. 65 times out of 100, that one wins. To a certain extent, I think that's where that's the best we can hope for with security, is give you sort of that sort of odds, if you will, or percentages. I don't think I will ever be able to guarantee someone that they're safe.
I think we're getting better, though. I think we've turned the corner.
We've gotten a lot better.
Yes.
I look back to where we were, you know, as I said, over the last 25, 30 years I've been involved in security. It was child's play back then. I mean, it was really
Hey, think
silly
about it. I mean, you've been at this a long time. Think about the 2014, 2015 time frame, post-target breach. What did we do? We threw crap at the wall.
Let's see what sticks.
See what stuck. Like we are vastly
Well,
better than we were, and it seems like we're starting to get a little bit ahead of the attacker. And I apologize. I realize what I'm saying is sacrilege.
You know, my grandmother would be upset that you're even letting that out of your lips.
I know, but God bless your grandmother, by the way. Yes, but yeah, no, I think we're starting. There's a maturation happening.
There's definitely a maturation,
Yep.
and we see it. You know, I'll bring it home to this QSC thing.
Yep.
We see it here.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Look, I remember when Philippe started Qualys. To tell you
Yes.
the truth, I was a competitor. I used to think he was crazy. But they were strictly a vulnerability management company.
Right.
And you come here now and you see all the things they're involved in and how it's not that they're bringing it all together, making a more holistic, a better view into your security posture so that you can better manage.
They're elevating the conversation.
No
from
doubt.
Patching stuff to creating outcomes. And part of that, by the way, is just making things easier, right? Security people are expensive.
Very.
Like holding on to them is hard. Like let's make it easy for them. Like there's so, like I say, the messages that you hear at companies like this week, you know, it kind of elevates the conversation to outcome centric. God bless it. It's about time. It's about time.
Yeah, I always thought in my career time we wouldn't see it, but maybe we will. Maybe.
Yeah.
If I stick around a little bit
There's
longer.
hope for us.
Anyway, hey Frank, for people who want to get more information on IDC and some of your work, where can they go?
IDC.com. Like I'm easy to find.
All right. Thank you so
Hey,
much.
appreciate
I
it.
should also mention Frank is doing a keynote
I am tomorrow.
tomorrow. Well, you're probably not. If you're not here in Vegas already, you won't see it because it's not virtual this year. But you should check it out. And usually the Qualys people put it on after anyway. But
They should.
if you are here, come check it out. This QSC show, by the way, is free. If you're in the Vegas area, come on down. Anyway, we're going to take a break. We'll be back in a bit here. We're live in Vegas at Qualys QSC 2022. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us back here at the Bellagio in Las Vegas for the Qualys Security Conference. If you can't tell by the lighting, it's getting a little later in the afternoon. It's a little colder than it was earlier, but it's still great to just be here, to be outside as well was kind of a bonus for us.
Yeah.
I'm here with Sarah Griffith. Sarah is a real live Qualys customer, or her company is anyway. And she's agreed to come on and talk to us a little bit about herself, her company, and why she came to this year's Qualys Security Conference. Hey, Sarah, welcome
Hi.
to Techstrong TV.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you. So I guess we should get the preliminary stuff out of the way. Who do you work for? What do you do?
Sure. So I'm a CISO for a company called Euronet Worldwide. We're a public financial services company. We do financial transaction processing. We service about 170 countries all over the world, both end-to-end consumers, customers, and businesses. And yeah, I've led the security practice for 8 years now, but I've been with the company 16. So,
Wow, that's
yeah.
amazing. That's
Yeah.
great.
I know.
Congratulations.
Crazy. Yeah.
You know, it's funny. We do a video program called CISO Talk. And my friend Matt Newell, who's the CISO at Unisys, is the co-host. And it amazes, I mean, being a CISO is a hard enough job. Right? Actually, Ben Carr from Qualys has been on a few of them with us.
Yes.
It's just, in today's world with COVID and everything going on, it was hard before.
Yeah.
It's really changed. But let's we'll talk about that. But you know, you're here at the Qualys Security Conference. Is this the first conference you've been to since COVID?
This is my second. I actually came to Black Hat here in Vegas in
Did
August.
you? You are brave.
It was miserable. It was hot, but
Yeah, it's hot in
yes,
August here.
that was my first conference back. So this is my second, but this one's a lot more pleasant. But yeah,
It's a little cooler
yeah,
for sure.
yeah. But Black Hat, it was. You know, I had a lot of the standard vendor meetings with current vendors, a few potential ones. So that's the one time a year you can kind of meet with everybody, and they can show you, new ways you can be utilizing either their current product or new features, and kind of work through those roadmaps, and then meet with other vendors. But this is my first Qualys conference I've actually been to in person.
Oh, you have not been to a Qualys Security Conference?
No.
So so this is my second conference, I should say as well. I was in LA last month for KubeCon, Cloud Native Con, which is not as much security, but that whole Cloud Native ecosystem.
Yep.
But I've been to several Qualys security conferences. This is the first one in Vegas because they're usually around RSA conference in San Francisco.
Yep.
And it's all one mumble jumble of security people.
Yes.
But this one is out here in Vegas. So what made you come out?
I mean, we've been a Qualys customer for several years now. And actually, I met with Shailesh, the head of VP or product development, when I was at Black Hat. And I was just kind of telling him about, here's some things that I love about the Qualys product. Here's some features I actually use as a CISO. I actually get my hands on it, and I'm looking up things in their vulnerability management platform or asset management. And I was asking him about some new products that we're utilizing, and he just said, I think it'd be great if you wanted to come and talk about, like, you're a CISO and you actually use the product, and we'd love to hear about some of your use cases. It'd be nice to share with our other customers. And then personally, I just wanted to come because even though a lot of my team, maybe some of the more technical guys are using Qualys even more than me, or the infrastructure teams, I want to learn more about it. I like the product, but I know there's a lot more room for me to learn, even the best way to optimize it and use it. So even as a CISO, and just for reporting and just checking in, on the status of our ecosystem, using Qualys. So I wanted to be out here to also learn more about
that's a
that
great
as well.
reason.
Yeah.
So I've been in the security world for about 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when Qualys kind of kicked off,
Yeah.
right? I will tell you, the Qualys you see here today, what they're talking about, is very, very different than the Qualys of even 5 years ago,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Back then, it was primarily a security scanner, vulnerability management.
Yep.
Where now it's much more of a platform play, right? They've instituted the
definitely.
agent
Yeah.
and automating patching
Yeah.
and like this. I don't know if you're using, for instance, the ransomware.
We're not using it yet, but we're going to test it out. Next year.
I mean,
it's great.
It makes sense, right?
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
I don't know your background as a CISO, but my background in security is, there are 0 days and exotic, crazy attacks that you probably can't help.
Yeah.
But if you could just take care of the basic block and tackling,
Yeah.
that's 80. I think that's 80% of the job.
Yeah. The basics, getting those basics covered.
Just the basics, right? These are the things.
Yeah.
These are the vulnerabilities that ransomware
Yeah.
utilizes,
Yeah.
which is really the crux of the Qualys
Yes.
solution. There's about 150 CVEs that 99% of all the ransomware is using.
Yep.
If you can knock those off, you've
It's a start.
reduced your risk to ransomware exponentially.
Oh, definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
And look, whether Qualys said that or another company, it doesn't make a difference to me. Just knowing that and being able and having that actionable intelligence, you're almost negligent not to do it,
No,
right?
definitely. It's just helping you prioritize. I mean, they already have a solution that helps you prioritize patching and what are your most severe vulnerabilities. But to even hone in on ransomware and taking a lot of the different telemetry and different data that's already in Qualys, but then like letting you conceptually see this is like true vulnerabilities related to ransomware that's been exposed, that are sitting in your environment. It definitely makes sense. And then they're adding in the patch management with that as well. So being able to automatically remediate that, as you allow in your ecosystem
some people
it's great.
go for it, some people not so much. Let me ask you another question. So you brought up the fact that, I've got more technical people on the team, but I want to learn more.
Yeah.
One of the hardest things of the CISO job, and I'm sure you, having done it now for years, is translating security talk to business talk for your fellow C-levels and the people
the board
you
and
report to,
Yeah.
and the board and so forth. Have you ever thought about giving them like a view into Qualys, for instance, or something, or just right over their head?
I mean, I don't know if I'd give them a view into Qualys. Like the board, it might be a little too much, but I can say we have an annual leadership meeting where typically we are doing a presentation, or I'm doing a presentation on security every year. It's a pivotal foundation of our company. I mean, we do
You're in financial
transaction processing. So we do share some of those dashboards, and we show them some of metrics of what we've improved. We show them some of the Qualys metrics as well. So we do actually show our business management that. And I think one of the things that helped us with the vulnerability management is we could create dashboards based on different business entities. And we use tagging to show these are assets that belong to this business segment or this business entity. And now we can actually take that, show it tangibly to the head of IT, the head of the country manager, the business leader, and security. And they're all sitting in the room saying, okay, we've told you have these risks, but you can actually see it right here. So, I mean, we are using it to communicate to the business. And luckily in my experience, I was director of internal audit, and I was an auditor for a long time. So I was comfortable. I guess I had to present to the
Talk
board
business, right.
for audit committee meetings. So like that's probably one benefit I have is in the CISO role is I've had that experience of getting to work with the board and our management teams and, knowing how to convey. I think a lot of CISOs, maybe that come up on the IT side, those technical acronyms and things they throw out. Sometimes the board, it's, they don't even know what you're talking about. Sometimes to a lot of people. So I think that's a key trait that I think a lot of CISOs have to build is how do you communicate this to the board? Because they just want to know like, what is our biggest threat and what are we doing about it? They don't need to know every single stat and metric that you have out there. It's great to see how you've improved, but they want to know what's the true risk to our business and what are you doing about it? So.
And that's the business aspect of it, right? What is the risk? Where's my exposure?
Yep.
What is my exposure?
Yeah.
So I get all that. Let's talk. It's been a crazy year and a half with COVID and everything, right? And, we've seen several not new, because very little is really new. It's just evolutionary. But, certainly ransomware has become a very popular attack vector. Supply chain attacks. It was, all the rage for a little bit here. People working remote and that kind of work from anywhere, and how do we lock that down? They're not VPNing in. They might be going cloud direct. Several new kind of wrinkles that we've had to deal with. As we sit here now, almost the end of 2021, what kind of keeps you up at night? What are the challenges that you say, this one's scary?
Yeah. I mean, all those that you mentioned are scary, of course, but are we acting on and continuously monitoring, those controls or utilizing those tools that we have to the best ability? Are we actually, following up on those alerts and closing those vulnerabilities? And because it takes one vulnerability, it takes one way in, whether it's through your employee, through spear phishing, or whether it's through a vulnerability that's not patched. There's always that risk that there's always a root cause when you have any incident or a breach or anything. So, you're always thinking like, I hope all of our teams are, taking, like, we're not becoming complacent to security, and we're thinking about it through, all the different teams, not just IT and security. So we're even our developers and everything like that. But I mean, ransomware, of course, is a risk that we've seen more prevalent in the last few years. And I think we're constantly trying to assess too, what other controls are we doing besides just vulnerability management to help us, prevent or detect, or not even detect, but more prevent and be prepared if ransomware would hit. But I think you always have the risk of, are you looking at a holistic view of your whole ecosystem, which is one thing that I'm not trying to just pitch Qualys, but it helps us. We have on that global asset management, we can look at our assets across the globe in 48 countries or so at the, click of a button. And so that helps us to see, okay, do we have those security agents or tools that we're using deployed on all of those endpoints, or servers or endpoints. So that's one way that definitely Qualys helps us, but we just want to make sure our teams are, we're utilizing what we're the security tools and controls that we have, and we're not missing anything. And we have enough procedures and tools and controls in place to help us detect if something came in a quick manner. So.
Yeah, no, I said this before. You can't protect what you don't know you even have.
Exactly.
And like today, for instance, API. I don't know if there's a problem with you guys, but API security has really become a major thing.
It's become a hot topic recently.
It really is.
Yes.
It's kind of the new AppSec. But, so I've spoken to a lot of people about this. The biggest issue we see is most people, what APIs do you have?
Yeah, exactly.
What APIs are you using?
Yeah.
They don't have
Are they rogue APIs? Are they known APIs? Yes, exactly.
They have no idea. Do you have 1,000 APIs, 10,000 APIs, two APIs?
Yeah. Are you cataloging them? Are we updating that?
And we need API asset management, if you will. I think that's the first step of a 12-step program. But I hear you with that. It's an interesting thing.
And so many more web applications and APIs connecting, tools together and communicating, authenticating. So it's definitely become more prevalent, I'd say, in the last couple years too, the use of APIs. And then just like you said, do you even know all the APIs you're using? It's kind of that shadow IT aspect too. Like we may not even know
what apps people are spinning up. And that'll keep you up at night.
Yes.
I would imagine it is. Sarah, I want to thank you for coming and joining us here. This was great.
Yeah.
Your presentation right? Well received. And
Thanks.
I'm not sure. I think Qualys is making these presentations available online in hybrid.
Yes, I heard they are.
So
yes,
you
they should all.
will, for those watching at home, you can check it out.
Yes.
But keep up the great work.
Great,
It's so
thank
great to
you.
hear a good, it's a
Yes.
feel-good story
Well,
for
it's nice.
once.
Hopefully, my presentation or other customer presentations just help people know. I mean, I know as a CISO, like you have security vendors coming at you all the time, every day, relentlessly.
Relentlessly, yes.
You know, so when we're really considering a vendor, I want to talk to other customers or CISOs not necessarily CISOs, but any customers.
to the
And you want to
vendors.
hear, and like,
Yeah.
I was happy to come and share our use
That's a
cases
great
and
story.
success stories. So hopefully
I
it
wish
helps
more people
others.
were like you.
Yeah.
I was a vendor for a good part of my life until about 8 years ago.
Mhm.
And for 20 years, I did the venture back startup thing in security. And it's hard. It's hard
yeah.
to get people to speak up.
Yeah.
Not that we're not going to blast you on TV or something, but just, a lot of people don't like to talk about their security.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a balance because there's always threat actors out there, that could target you or whatever.
God knows.
I mean, we're careful about talking about our security stack or, even
You have to
what
be.
you share with auditors. You want to be, I mean, I was an auditor. I know how that is. But like even just, you want to be careful because they may try to take any vendor you're working with or any type of system you're working with to try to exploit that however they can. So, yeah.
This is why we can't have nice things.
Yes, exactly.
Sarah Griffith here on Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with our continuing coverage of the Qualys Security Conference live at Bellagio in Las Vegas. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, we're back here in Vegas. Welcome. We're at the Qualys QSC show 2022. If you've never been to a Qualys QSC and you're into security and remediation and risk management, I highly, highly recommend it. The great thing about this show is it actually, Qualys doesn't charge attendees. Where are you going to get it? For the meals alone, it's probably worth it. But if you can't make it to Vegas for their QSC, though, they usually do a road show. And around, maybe you can help me. I know they were in San Francisco and Atlanta.
Dallas, Chicago,
Dallas,
New York.
So New York, and that's just in North America. So if you get a chance, and I highly, highly recommend checking out a Qualys QSC. Not only is it great to learn about what Qualys is doing, but you're going to learn about what the state of the industry is, and it's a great opportunity to meet with your peers and exchange ideas. Anyway, let me introduce you to my next guest. He was actually with us at last year's Qualys QSC here in Vegas, and his name is Eran Livnei, right? And Eran, I gave them your name, but tell them a little about yourself.
So yes, so I'm Eran. I'm basically managing Qualys's ability to respond to all the vulnerability that we find. Part of what we're trying to do in Qualys is help you take all the large number of vulnerability that you can prioritize with us, but actually find a solution. How can you solve it? How can you remediate? Is it patch? Is it a configuration change? Whatever you need to do in whatever process that you need to get them safe to do the change safely, so the vulnerability will not be there anymore, but nothing will break.
Right. So Eran, as you know, I've been in security a long time. One of my personal aggravations is that we have talked about prioritizing vulnerabilities, most bang for the buck on remediation. We've talked a good game around remediation for 15, 20 years. Mm-hmm. But as you and I sit here today, a lot hasn't changed in terms of utilizing some of the great technology that's been developed, right? Automation, automated patching is probably one of my, and when I say patching, I don't mean just applying a patch. I mean maybe changing a misconfiguration or a bad configuration. Yeah. It's not that doing it is hard, but for whatever reason, I used to think it was a security industry problem. It's not just the security folk. It's the IT people too. They're afraid to let something be done automatically.
Mm-hmm. And that's something we see, and I think I agree with you. That's the biggest challenge, that we see so many vulnerability discovered and nothing is done with it, right?
Absolutely.
And the story that always I heard from customers, they always tell me, I had an accident 5 years ago that I patched Java and it doesn't work anymore. My Chrome, which always worked, there was one case with something didn't work, we cannot patch Chrome anymore.
Right.
The challenge there is that those IT guys, and they live in their own side of the organization, and they use their own tools, and they don't understand the impact, the security impact, the risk, that this fear.
That is a risk. It's a risk management.
Exactly. So there's an open risk, and because of something that happened a long time ago, they're not exposed to the risk. They're not exposed to basically this decision, what it costs the organization from a risk perspective.
Two things on that point. Number one, I always thought it was a little bit lunacy, right? It was a lunatic kind of idea of saying, you know what, I'm afraid that fixing this vulnerability, which is probably a serious vulnerability with exploits in the wild and everything else, I'm afraid if I apply this patch without fixing it, I'm going to break something. So I don't want to break anything, so I'm just going to leave this vulnerability there and hope for the best. Mm-hmm. And then no one ever gets fired, right? You were using an old open source, you were using struts too instead of updating to the latest version. You didn't apply this patch that came out 30 days ago. And they said, well, because we had to fully test it first, right? Mm-hmm. It takes 45 days. Mm-hmm. But it's okay. That risk they're willing to live with. The one in I don't know how many chance that it breaks Chrome and then you have to undo it, that they won't live with.
Yeah, and you're right. That's something that repeats itself. That's the reason where, when I'm talking from a quality perspective, what we are doing, we know how to discover those vulnerabilities and prioritize them.
Sure.
But that's one thing. As you said, there is also this IT guy that has this experience. What we're trying to do, we're trying to bridge this gap. We're trying to show IT, here is what it means not to take this action. Here's what it means not to deploy the Chrome patch or not to deploy this Java. This is how much risk you're exposed to. So we're trying to bridge the gap and show those two different people what's going on in each one of each one of their roles. And yes, there are cases where you may you don't want to patch a production environment immediately, because if the production breaks, you may lose more money. A great example: ICU devices.
Yeah.
Those things, if they break, somebody will die.
Somebody dies.
Right?
You're
So
right.
we cannot take the chances. But because we can understand the risk and we can understand the operational risk, what happens if it breaks, but what happens if I don't patch it, and everything is in one location, you can much better communicate with each other and decide, here's something I can do easily, here's something I can't do easily, and I know how much risk I'm exposed to because I'm not doing it easily.
Yeah. You know what, I want to emphasize what you said, though. When it comes to medical, life and death, critical infrastructure, I think anyone could understand why you want to, test and not just maybe just automate the heck out of it. But then there's another element, and you hit on it when you spoke, not before, and that is, well, it broke Chrome once.
Yes.
The chances, usually what happens is because it broke Chrome once, that's the first thing people are going to test in a patch. Let's make sure it doesn't break Chrome again.
Exactly.
Right? So there's probably less of a chance of it breaking Chrome than something that we haven't seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But they don't care. The people who say no, don't do it, they don't think about it that way. It broke Chrome once, it could break Chrome again, Again, it defies logic.
Exactly. And we also talked a little bit before about automation, right?
Yeah.
Chrome is a great example, but I always, the reason I talk about Chrome, because customers do have experience with Chrome. The problem with browsers is that some old web applications can break when you upgrade the browser itself. So the Chrome is broken, basically the application that uses Chrome is broken.
Right.
And the thing is, it happened long ago because JavaScript and all those things are, 5-10 years old application may cause the problem, but it's 99% is not the case. But let's take another example. iTunes, VLC.
Oh.
You won't believe how many customers we run. We have all those reports, anonymous report, but how many customers are using those? What can happen if iTunes breaks? How many company needs iTunes as a mission critical application? Everybody's using it to stream.
Yeah, of course.
If that doesn't work, somebody will not be able to stream music. I bet the business will survive. Now, when you look at the risk, how much
Unless you're a music streaming business,
Exactly.
then I can
I
understand.
totally agree.
Right?
But when you look at the risk that Chrome provides, and we have those reports, you can see how much risk your specific Chrome in your specific environment, how much risk it introduced. You can see the risk is so high, and the fact that you're not automating and making sure it's always up to date, it's just extra work that you need to do. When you have to go through all these reports and you have to manually patch Chrome, it doesn't make sense. So there's so many candidates to automate patching, or we don't call it patching anymore, we call it remediation, because we don't care about the patch itself, we care about let's fix the vulnerability.
Yeah.
So much automation you can do there without breaking things, or with very low risk of breaking things.
Right. I think in some organizations, just all remediation is equal, right? They don't quantify how hard the remediation is or what the possible effects of the remediation is. They don't even necessarily apply it to the risk of not remediating, right? Is it a major risk? Is it exposable? And all of these things. Iran, I want to talk to you a little bit. The economy, it's no secret, right? We've seen layoffs in tech. We haven't seen layoffs in tech in I don't know how long. And everybody's budgets are shrinking. Though, to be fair, security is more important than it's ever been before. And it's a bit of a sacred cow, right, the security budget. But nevertheless, we're going to have to make do with less, right? Less headcount, less people, less hands. And, my theory, and I spoke to you about it off camera, is that this may in fact help kind of not force, but encourage companies to use more automation for remediation. What do you think?
I totally agree with that. Because when you think about automation, it's not only if somebody's get fired, or we will fire somebody because we're automating things. It's actually the thing that we see with automation the most is you get more efficient. So the same, if our people, there's less people in the company, less people can achieve more with automation. And the key with automation, always when I say automation, I like to say smart automation. And not just call it automation, because people are worried about automation. As you say, we don't want to automate patching for ICU devices, right?
Right.
But smart automation means let's understand where most of the risk is. Let's understand the operational risk. So what can happen if this thing, if iTunes break, if Chrome break, on the workstation compared to production environment, right? Those are different questions that we need to ask. Once we understand the operational risk, what can go wrong, and what is the risk itself, the security risk that I'm exposed to because I'm not patching, automation can play a huge role because there's so many places you can apply automation, and basically we call it in quality zero-touch automation. You define it once and it takes care of itself. It basically takes care of making sure that there's no zero-day. Chrome just released 2 weeks ago, over the weekend or before the weekend, they released a critical zero-day patch. What most organizations need to do, they need a person to go spend the time over the weekend, test everything, package everything, and deploy everything. If they have automation running, they don't need this person. The person doesn't need to spend the weekend.
Absolutely. You say that. A lesson I learned early on in my security career is I was talking to a CIO at I forgot what it was, at a bank or a company, and I made that argument. You know what? If you would use vulnerability prioritization, you do your scan, you know which ones are the ones you must do first, your people wouldn't have to work on weekends. You know what he told me? He said, I pay them by the week. I don't care if they work weekends. And that was, that's a bad attitude. Let's face it, right? You burn through your people like that. But I hope, if there's a silver lining in this economic malaise and stuff, that we will see more automation, smart automation, like you're talking about, because that's the key, right? And the more people use it, the more confidence, the more they'll use it more.
Exactly. And I have actually great customer story that tells the story that they start with automation, they start to trust the system, they see that the demand is not so bad, it's not really as frightening as it sounds, and they try to trust it more and more. So there's less change control. You just trust the system. And there's one more important thing. When we talk about automation, there's what I call proactive automation. Those are the patching of Chrome. So once you automate the patching of those low-hanging fruit, the things that you can automate easily, you don't have to mess with all those large detection reports because you're taking care of those before we even detect the vulnerability. Again, save you time, save your people the need to do those work on a regular basis.
Absolutely. And I hope you have more stories like that to tell us next year.
Yeah.
Right? Because that'll be a key thing. Eran, thank you for coming in again. I hope it won't be a whole year till we talk to you. But, we do this 3 days a week. You can always come on and say hello.
I will. Thank you very much.
All right. We're live in Las Vegas at Qualys QSC 2022. We'll be back in just a little bit with some more interesting guests and insights into the state of security. Hey everyone, we're back here live in Vegas for the Qualys QSC event 2022. I'm really happy to, one of the nice things is we've had a good mix of Qualys people, speakers, customers. I'm going to introduce you now to a gentleman who's from a company there. They're maybe like a Qualys channel partner, I guess is the best way to describe it. His name is Juan Carlos JC Naharan, but he's going to say it better than me.
Yeah, it's just Jose Carlos Nájera, so JC for friends, right?
All right, and so we got JC here. So JC, first of all, before we get into your company, a little bit about your background.
Right, so I've been using Qualys for almost 10 years now, so I like Qualys a lot. I am the subject matter expert for vulnerability management for Syntax. Syntax is a large ERP hosting company. We do SAP, we do Oracle business, and we have our advanced security services as well. So that's pretty much it, yeah.
You know what attracted when you told me about this, JC, is that in the dot-com days, 1990, late 90s, then into 2000, I actually helped put together a company that back then we called it an ASP, application service provider.
Right.
But we would be hosting Oracle applications and PeopleSoft and Lotus Notes and a bunch of enterprise kind of apps like that. So, and then that's actually how I got into security, is we started hosting managed firewalls, checkpoint firewalls.
Wow.
And that was how I started security. So it's a generation before you, but a very similar kind of
Pretty
path.
similar, yeah.
So, the interesting thing I know from my own story as well as from talking to you is, look, when you're hosting people's mission critical applications like that, you take on the role of sort of a trusted advisor.
Right.
Right? And they want to make sure their apps are running. And security is part of that. It's not just the app itself, it's the delivery, it's the availability, all of the things you want in an ERP provider. So let's talk. Now you mentioned you were for vulnerability, you were the subject SME.
Yes, sir.
For it. What are your customers expecting from you?
Well, I mean, they normally want to know how can they measure risk on their end, right? It's very important. It's how we can translate the security conversational language into the business language, so then people can understand that. And by people, I mean executives, there's two levels, right?
Yep.
So they trust us on telling them where are the risks at. So we're using Qualys to do that. So what we're doing is with this new true risk thing, which is very interesting because we can assign criticality to their assets, and then with that and the Qualys detection scores, we can see exactly what the risks are based on that asset. So the crown jewels, for example, they're super important. Internet-facing devices are important. They get this criticality score assigned, and then Qualys tells us what is really important. Volume-based is something that it's already past, right? It's old-fashioned now.
Yeah.
So it's all about risk, basically.
Well, if you think about it, it's always been all about risk. We just didn't know how to measure and manage it well,
Exactly,
right? And we're getting better at it. When you use Qualys, so you mentioned some scores and stuff, and then kind of translating the security talk to the business talk. I've been in that. I've been in your chair, right? And what is the customer? What does that C-level customer want to know? Am I at risk? Am I safe? Is my stuff safe?
Right.
And I don't care how good you are, you're never totally safe.
Right.
Especially if you're connected to the internet. It's the nature of the beast. And I think people have to understand that when we say manage risk, we don't say you're safe. We don't say you're never going to be attacked. We don't say you're never going to have an incident. What we say is, look, for the amount of resources we're putting in, we're lowering the chance of that happening
Exactly. Yeah.
significantly. If you want to lower it to zero, you're going to have to put in a lot more resources, probably, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And maybe disconnect from the internet.
Yeah, I mean, having zero vulnerabilities, I mean, it technically could be possible, but you will need to patch every single day and reboot every single day.
And that's only in a point in time. Tomorrow you're liable to find vulnerability.
Exactly. So you got to be very, very wit to what you're targeting, and that's why, risk is all about. Like, you have a lot of vulnerabilities being released every single day. You cannot keep up with that. So you got to focus on what's really important, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so that gets into the whole prioritization of vulnerabilities.
Exactly. Yeah, the prioritization module. I was joking with Matt Barnes, my TAM, and I told him when I saw first the prioritization module that I was worried I would go out of like no job at all, because that thing it's a good thing. It's a good tool. You can put in or craft a special recipe, and then click one button, and then you will get your priorities over there. And now with the true risk part, you don't even need to think about the recipe anymore, because it's already in there.
Does it for
right?
you.
So it's super
But
good.
you know what? I've been at this a little longer than you. Security people never become obsolete. Not to worry, JC. You'll always have a job, man.
Oh yeah.
But you're right. It has gotten much simpler to zero in on these things.
Yep.
So now you're in maybe a little different position than some of the other customers because you're servicing a wide amount of customers. So the amount of environments, the amount of different vulnerabilities, the amount of variables that you're dealing with, right? In many ways, you probably see, 10x, 100x more than just a person who works for one company.
Yeah.
And so you're using Qualys across the board here with that. And you find it scales out and fits the bill.
Yeah, absolutely. So and that's one of my favorite parts about my job at Syntax, where since we are an ERP company, we have the chance to meet a lot of customers with different needs, different perspectives, different problems, different challenges. But in essence, I mean, if you can standardize them in a single platform, such as Qualys, right? And that's what this job is like. Why this is fun, right?
Yeah.
We get this new perspective
It's
every
always
single
new.
day. It's always new. It's always new, and you gotta be super creative to find those things, and then expose to the C-levels and the executives your ideas, so they understand what's really the risk, because their businesses are different, right? So you got to be very creative on that.
Absolutely. Have you had an exposure to the Total Cloud FlexScan?
I haven't.
Not.
I just saw the presentation.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. I really, really want to go.
I got to imagine in your, in Syntax's line of business, this is going to be something you guys probably got to get
Absolutely.
in the field quick.
Yeah, we rely a lot on the ERP cloud part. So we're doing SAP over AWS or Azure, for example, or
That's what I
OCI
was
even.
thinking, yeah.
So it's going to be a game changer for sure, because we do want to do what we're doing currently on the, let's say, the traditional way of doing SAP or Oracle or whatever, to the cloud as well. So this is just going to make our lives easier, to be honest.
I agree. Excellent stuff. You know what I didn't ask you? For people who want to maybe get more information on Syntax, what's the website?
So it's www.syntax.com.
Could you spell that for us?
Yeah, it's SYNTAX.com.
Check it out. JC, thanks for being our
No
guest.
problem. Thank you very much.
Keep fighting the good fight, man.
Will do, sir.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
All right. Hey, we're live in Vegas here at Qualys QSC. We're going to be back in a minute. Hey, we're live here in Las Vegas. I wasn't sure. We are at the Bellagio at the Qualys Security Conference, and it's a beautiful day out here in Vegas. We're outside under canvas, but because we're outside, no mask, nothing really to worry about. It's all good. I'm joined by Ron Tosto, right? And Ron is with Surveydus. Surveydus is one of Qualys's partners. And, well, Ron, why don't you tell the folks a little bit about Surveydus?
Yeah, thanks. We are a cybersecurity consulting and compliance consultant, and right, and I really have those two words in there, right, because we, as an organization, really believe in cybersecurity, and we know there's tons of compliance out there, and you have to do both. And we truly believe it does start with security, and it's not about you know, we always know as cybersecurity professionals that security and compliance are not the same, right? And you have to have security. The compliance piece is about demonstrating it. And so and one of the things that we also know is the number of security professionals, the gap between those that exist and the number of needs is growing astronomically.
Yeah.
In 2020, it grew over 200,000 vacancies that were not filled. And so we're here to help also fill in the capacity and capability for organizations. So, you know, SMBs, we see a lot because they don't have the right people to help carry out a good cybersecurity program. And so, and that's what we focus on, you know, as a consulting company.
You know, Ron, listening to you, well, we should mention Surveydus has a QSA service, right?
Yep, we are a qualified security assessor company for the folks that are doing PCI DSS.
And then you also do some SWIFT compliance as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. SWIFT organization really started pushing doing external independent auditors, and they said, hey, and oh, by the way, QSAs are a great start. They've been doing it for a long time. We understand the plan of how to reduce risk and, you know, what the compliance is. So it was a good natural fit to help folks focus on payment security. We know that one of the biggest motivators for hackers is financial gain. And so why not start with making sure the finances are secure? And
absolutely.
So and that's where we're at. So
yeah. You know, Ron, I spent a portion of my career involved in PCI. I started a company after I left my last venture-backed security company. It was CISO Group was the name of it, and we were coming in, kind of parachuting in and setting up security programs for SMBs, SMEs. Then PCI burst on the scene, and I mean burst. And we had developed just this silly little web app that allowed, you know, level 4 merchants to fill out their compliance, you know, program for PCI.
yeah, their self-assessment questionnaire.
Yeah, self-assessments. Because they were level 4. They didn't need a QSA unless something happened. But, excuse me, but the payment processors were requiring this of them. What an eye-opening education I got, because I came to realize a couple things. Number one, 90% of these merchants, you know, companies didn't give a rat's nest about security.
Yeah.
Other things I learned. Virtually every orthodontist in this country, no one pays for their kids' braces in one fell swoop. They pay monthly. And every orthodontist is storing, sometimes unwritten, you know, and sometimes in a spreadsheet, the client's credit cards that they run every month for the kids' braces until they finally came out with like vaults that you could set that up. But what a menace. I used to see that and I would cringe.
Yeah,
what an accident waiting to happen.
You know, even when I started in PCI personally, which was back in 2013, PCI was still fairly new. You know, when we go to a client site and you know, we just start asking questions, and they're like, hey, you know, do you ever, you know, like, what happens when your computer goes offline? How do you do payments? And, you know, and they're like, oh, let's open this cabinet and go in, and they pull this,
the knuckle
buster out, you know, or, and it's like, oh, please,
what do you do with those imprints?
Please put that back in the cabinet.
I know.
You know, I mean, it has come a long way.
Yeah.
There is a lot of great programs, you know, having certified point-to-point encryption programs helps to reduce
well, there's really no reason for people to be storing credit card data. I'm sorry.
Oh,
You know,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
there are enough third-party programs that are damn good that will store that stuff for you, so you don't have to. You know, another thing I learned: a lot of these SMBs, they don't have in-house IT, right? They don't have a full-time IT, let alone a full-time security
and
person.
that's why we're here.
Well, no, I would imagine it is. But what I would see is like one IT firm would cover 30, 25 businesses in town. And there was, let's just say there wasn't a Chinese wall between each of the businesses' infrastructure, because the IT guy was storing them on a server at, some data center. So I'm talking like 2008, 2009. Cloud wasn't as what it is
Yeah,
today.
there wasn't cloud, there wasn't hybrid.
Well, there was AWS. Hybrid was a fantasy. But
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well,
And
and you know
it was
what's
crazy.
interesting, Alan, is that even here at the QSC 21, I've met a couple of analysts, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm in charge of vulnerability management and using the Qualys tools," and they're like, "Oh yeah, and I'm the PCI compliance guy as well." So they're still,
Mixing and matching that.
and these are fairly large organizations,
Yeah.
and so they're having to do primary and collateral duties. Like you said, there's no wall
Yeah.
in the functionality, and so I think that's really where he gets into the Qualys services.
Right.
Is they're there to make a difference and really take it to that next level. For PCI compliance management, but there's FedRAMP and NIST. And some of the things that have been introduced this week have just been awesome.
A lot of automation, a lot of remediation. I wanted to talk a little bit about Surveillance relationship with Qualys, right? Because everybody's a VAR, everybody's partnered, and all of that. How do you guys in your everyday practice leverage Qualys?
Well, the biggest thing, and since we've already talked about the PCI piece, right, is one of the number one security controls that consistently fail for organizations going through assessment is vulnerability management.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting, it's not about did they scan and know what their vulnerabilities are, it's the life cycle. And so the life cycle being, did we open tickets? Do we know now what our risks are? And did we fix them? Did we remediate? Did we make those patches happen? And so for us, when we work with a client, this is, hey, you're not there, but there's a program. And so this week, as we talk about the VMDR, it's about that life cycle. It's about, and I'll equate it to PCI, so asset management, that's a PCI requirement too. Doing the vulnerability scans, knowing what vulnerabilities you have, that's a requirement 11. Knowing the risk, requirement 12 and 6, and doing the remediations are requirement 6 as well.
It's like old home week for me.
I
hear
you so it just seemed like a real natural fit is, how do we help companies be secure on a continual basis? And because if you notice, I really named 5 things. The VMDR, they talk about the 4. PCI says, hey, we do want you to revalidate the patch worked and there's no more vulnerability. But, that's just a perfect tool. And that's in addition to their, being a approved scan vendor tools and the PCI compliance tools, which Qualys does. So for us, being a partner just made sense. I don't have to spend the time building a tool. Why should I? There's already a good one there, and it's Qualys. So we just said, hey, let's partner with Qualys. As you said, the small organizations that don't have an IT staff, they need someone to help them manage that program. So managing compliance program, managing their vulnerabilities in the entire life cycle, were just really key elements. And so it's been a really great partnership. Even recently, you may or may not know that the number of breaches in 2021, as of September, was already 17% higher than the entire year of 2020, right? So, and part of that has been the ransomware readiness.
Well, it's COVID, right? Because
Yeah.
bad people never miss an opportunity
Well,
to take advantage of a bad situation.
well, that's right. And, and Qualys stepped up with their ransomware readiness
Yep, we've been talking
assessment
about it.
tools.
Yeah.
And so that's been, for us, it's like even going outside of SWIFT and PCI and, compliance, it's like because of COVID, because the breaches have been on the rise, we, really have to step up our game to make sure that organizations are there. And we have the tools and we have the dashboards and the reportings that that really help with the ransomware readiness. And I really like to call it continuous ransomware readiness as opposed to readiness assessment, because CISA, they have a great tool they've been really pushing to help organizations be ready, and they have a tool for doing assessments, but it is truly a point in time assessment. Where
That was always one of the issues with PCI, frankly.
right. Well, and that's where the Koala's tool sat everything. Ransomware and everything else is about continuous monitoring,
Right.
and so
And
that's been
that's
perfect
the
for
way
us.
you've got to do. I want to take it up 50,000 feet for a second and talk again about the relationship between security and compliance. We talked about it off camera a bit, right? I've always, not always, but I've for many years have said that compliance is a byproduct of good security. And I noticed when you were talking about Surveydus and what you guys do, you didn't lead with we're a compliance organization or helping organizations be compliant. You led with being cybersecurity consulting organization. And I think that is a really key thing for our audience out here to kind of internalize, which is if you're just going to go out there saying, oh my God, I got to comply with PCI, or I'm a financial institution, I need that third party audit for my SWIFT stuff, right? And that's the only reason you're doing it. Compliance, it's useless, right?
Yeah.
If you're not,
Yeah, absolutely.
right, it's got to be about the security. The compliance is sort of the evidence of it, but it's a byproduct.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I didn't tell you off camera, so the Surveydus name is literally made up of 3 Latin words that stands for guard, knowledge, health. It doesn't mean to maintain compliance
Right.
requirements,
Exactly.
right? So literally our name, I mean, we started with, what are we going to name the company? And we really did a lot of research. And so that's how we came with the name, was what do we want to do? What do we want to be the core to be? So I appreciate you realizing like the way we speak is about security. We'll get to the compliance piece, but the compliance piece,
It's a byproduct, man. If you got
Absolutely.
your security down pat, the compliance piece gets easy. Excellent. Hey, I want to thank you for coming out here and joining. I know you guys are in busy sessions and everything else, but joining us out here on the patio.
Yeah, that's nice. Well, just to get outside, take the mask off for a little while.
Well, that's the nice thing about being
that was
out
probably
here.
the number one right there.
Yeah, no, that's
But
a
being
good
able to
thing.
share is always awesome.
Hey, you know what we didn't tell people though? If they're interested in Surveydus, they maybe need help. What's the website?
So it's pretty easy, www.surveydus.com.
That's SERVADUS.
Right. And we're also on LinkedIn. We're always posting stuff. I have a little rundown with Ron, which are kind of, fun things that just help remind people of the basics. But either one, they'll be able to reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. And we'd love to hear from them.
Great. Thanks, Ron.
Thanks, Alan.
Enjoy the rest of your Qualys Security Conference. Surveydus, Qualys Security Partner, here at Qualys Security Conference. We're live in the Bellagio. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back here live in Las Vegas from Bellagio at the Qualys Security Conference 2021. We are continuing our coverage. Our next guest is Marianne Horst, right? Marianne is with the Norton LifeLock folks, and well, I'm going to let her tell her story. Marianne, welcome. Thank you for joining us. So, what do you do at Norton LifeLock?
Sure. So I've been with Norton LifeLock for just about 10 years. And most recently, my main focus is just on reducing our cloud attack surface. So that's why we're here with Qualys. So we're doing that.
So, I always tell people, in order to reduce your cloud attack surface, you first have to know what your cloud attack surface is. And, that's step one, right? Understanding what is your attack surface, and now how do I defend it, and how sometimes you can reduce it, sometimes it is what it is, and I have to defend it. I can't reduce it too much. But you presented here.
Yes. Yeah.
And why don't tell us, if you don't mind sharing, what was your presentation on?
Sure. My presentation was specifically on CloudView, which is the Qualys solution for kind of determining misconfigurations in the cloud. So it's a little bit different than the VM module, which scans for vulnerabilities and missing patches and things like that. This is specifically around configurations and settings and things like that.
Right.
So we implemented CloudView because we saw that there was a gap between some of the other tools that we had, and we wanted to address that. And then one of the unanticipated benefits that we had was vastly improving our asset inventory. Because like many companies, we have exactly that issue, right? Like how do we know that we have a reliable asset inventory? How do we know what we don't know? And that's really where CloudView helped us. Because with the VM module, we have IP appliances that scan, like discovery scans, things like that. We have cloud agents on our machines, so those are like two ways to discover things. But ever since we onboarded CloudView, which has a connector, which is kind of a third type of technology to discover things, we really exponentially saw the quality of our asset inventory improve as we were able to triangulate kind of gaps that we were seeing, like, we see this with our IP scans, but we don't have a cloud agent on it, let's fix that, and then vice versa, and it really made the quality a lot better.
Absolutely. So a couple things on this, right? So first of all, asset inventory has become so important.
Yes.
Right? There was a time where, look, if I didn't have an agent on it, I didn't worry about it, right? Because it wasn't in my worldview. But that does you no good if someone hits an unprotected node that's connected to the rest of your network. You might as well have just opened the front door for them, right? So accurate asset inventory of what instances are out there, what's connected, how's it connected, is of course an important piece. You can't put agents on stuff you don't know is there.
Yeah.
So you can't protect it. Secondly, though, you're right about misconfiguration, right? Certainly CVEs, and God knows is enough. And we look at like OWASP top 10 kind of vulnerabilities. But misconfigurations are still the easiest way, right? Yes. There are plenty of bad guys who have exotic 0 days. Right, and it's hard to protect against them. But, the bread and butter of security events come from misconfigured servers. People don't realize they have it open to the internet.
Yes. Yeah.
Stuff like that. And that's exactly the kind of stuff CloudView is looking for.
Yes.
So I got to ask a question, though. So we also run DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, a bunch of sites. One of the great things about DevOps is you automate as much as you can. And in automation, especially when it comes to cloud, we can automate our cloud configuration, our instances, using any number of tools, Ansible or Puppet, Chef, all those kinds of tools. How is it that it's almost like, how can you keep misconfiguring your servers, your instances, right, when you're using tools like this? Right? Was it that it was misconfigured to begin with, or was there a drift over time as we kept with immutable infrastructure and everything? You kept reissuing instances, retiring old ones, starting new ones. How does this misconfiguration find its way in?
Sure, I think it's actually not a technology issue as much as it is a human nature issue, right?
Typical in security,
Yes,
right?
yes. So we strive to go from auditing to automated remediations, which you can do with CloudView, right? You can either
Yep.
audit and read the configurations, or you can actually go out and configure it to remediate. I think it's a lot easier to do on things that are newer because you're configuring them correctly from the beginning versus you kind of have to build a baseline of what's normal for the stuff that's already there. Now in the cloud, it's a little bit easier than on premise because the cloud churns over so much, right?
Right.
Like what's here maybe only exists for 11 minutes and then it's gone.
Right,
So we have that, but I think that a lot of the misconfigurations, at least in the beginning that we saw, was more users trying to get their job done, and it never occurred to them like, oh, I don't need this, but do I turn it off? And
Yeah.
so it's more of making people more mindful that maybe it makes your job easier to not think about this, but it leaves you open for attack. And so what
Yeah.
we
So, it's funny. Before you came on, I was talking with a fellow from Montana State University, and we had this whole discussion around mindset, changing people's mindset, right? So the idea of using a standard configuration that's been approved, right? It sounds so simple. It does. It says, oh, what's the big deal? Here's our standard configuration. You're going to be a lot more secure using this standard configuration. But yet people, their mindset is, no, but I could just do this. And they pop on to AWS or whatever they're using, and they say, I'm not sure what that button is. I'm not even, I'm going to leave that on. I don't know. And then lo and behold, right, you've got this instance and God knows. And then it almost becomes memorialized because the next person comes by and says, oh, yeah, that's what Marianne used.
Yes.
She clones it, right? Or he clones it. And now we've got sprawl of this misconfiguration. And that's exactly, what a CloudView kind of product does. How long have you been using it?
For about 2 years. We bought, I don't know exactly when they released it, but we bought it very close to when it fresh came off the press.
And you mentioned that early on you found a ton of stuff, right? And that's to be expected.
Yes.
But like once you have it up and running, right, it's baselined, right? Do you have any metrics or anything about, what you're finding, how often you're finding stuff? What are the most common kinds of misconfigurations you're seeing out there?
Sure. So we have everything automated with our ticketing solutions, right? ServiceNow, Jira, those kind of things, because we want to get the results out of CloudView in a way that's not a PDF or an Excel sheet.
Right.
So we created tickets for teams so that they get assigned to, and those are the ticketing systems that they already use in their normal operations and for their changes and things like that. So for one, we wanted to get the information out there in a way that they are used to. And then the other part was that we could then take the tickets and quantify, well, how many times is this thing failing or that thing failing, and kind of get away from individual tickets and the little minutia of fixing things and look at a bigger picture and kind of metrics of like, what do we see a lot, right? And I think a lot of it was people don't thinking like, oh, these access controls, we really need to turn that off, and or trying to make it available for more of their teammates, but maybe not realizing that it's opening it up to more people than just
they don't have that security mindset, quite frankly.
Yeah, and then so we would see access control things or even certain network controls because you're trying to integrate you have your cloud accounts and you're running things in the cloud, and now you got to hook it up to maybe some of the stuff that we're still running on-prem, right? So there might be some network controls that are a little bit further open that they assumed they were,
Right.
and in some cases they may also assume that we have some compensating controls in our company that may or may not be there, right? And
Top secret.
yes, so those were some of the things that we saw
Saw a
early
lot.
on.
You mentioned that you're integrating it into your ticket system. You mentioned Jira, for instance,
Yeah.
from Atlassian. So is that a like sort of an API
Yes.
from Qualys into it? So this is another area that I think, my opinion, this is the next big problem in security is API security, right? And I'd love to see CloudView or some sort of product like that tells me what APIs do I have.
Yeah.
Have you guys looked into that at all yet? Or I realize it may be outside of your expertise, but does that kind of keep you up at night, sort of?
Maybe, yeah. We have lots of things that keep us up, simply because we're a security company, so we're
Right.
always gonna go beyond what's our regulatory compliance. What are we obliged to be compliant with, and try to do true security, and what is the right thing to do for our customers. But yes, I would agree. Like knowing what APIs are out there and what data you can read out of them, not even just even trying to edit something, but just the information you can gather is a concern.
And
Yes.
how people could use them maliciously for, you
Yes.
know. I mean, to me, that's a new frontier in asset inventory,
Yes.
right? That's got to be part of your inventory. What's connected? Because a lot of those APIs are going to third-party
Yeah.
things that are hosted outside of your network that you don't have control over.
Yes,
And
yeah.
that gets me scared.
Yeah.
I mean, quite frankly. But that sounds great. So beyond CloudView, do you use the rest of the Qualys suite platform?
Yeah, we
or
use several other modules as well. The VM module, we have the web application scanning module.
Are you doing automated remediation at this point, or still looking at it?
We have not automated the actual push of remediation yet. Yeah.
I think that's another mindset.
Yes.
Maybe for another interview. But yeah, we've seen that. But again, I've been in security for 20, 25 years, and I know that's going to be that'll break down a lot of barriers.
Yeah, I think.
Alrighty. Hey, we're back. We're back in Las Vegas. We are at the Venetian Hotel, the site of QSC 2022, Qualys' security conference. One of the nice things I love about doing the QSC is, you know, we get to speak to real life security people who are practitioners, who are on the front lines protecting stuff. I got someone like that to introduce you to here. His name's Chris Ong. Chris, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Chris, even before we get into Jabil, the company you work with, give people a little bit of your background.
Sure thing. I've been in IT for about 20-something years, and with a primary focus on information security and assurance for about 17. So just have a couple certifications from vendors such as ISACA, CompTIA, Cloud Security Alliance, and have a versatile background from Department of Defense to manufacturing and pharmaceuticals.
Can't tell you how happy you made me saying information security and not cyber.
Yeah.
Because that was my generation too. We called it InfoSec.
Yeah, my company now is focusing on saying cybersecurity, so I'm kind of having to change up my speak as well.
I've learned to talk the talk, but it's information security. Anyway, Chris, talk about your company a little bit.
Perfect. Yeah, so I work at Jabil. It used to be called Jabil Circuit, primarily founded in the 1960s, and it was out of Michigan, and now they're headquartered in St. Petersburg, Florida, and primarily a global manufacturer from plastics to chips, and branching out into medical and automotive and things like that, and broken up into new divisions and in about 30 countries.
Not broken up into separate companies, but different business units. And
we have big
within.
manufacturing presence in Mexico, China. Some of our big manufacturing plants are overseas, and we're in Europe as well, South America, Brazil. So
That's great stuff. And what? I'm sorry if I didn't ask before. What's your role there?
my role is global cybersecurity manager, and I take care of the engineering and operations. So any of the products that we purchase at Jabil that keep the lights on, so your antivirus, your firewalls, anything that keeps the company safe, my team and I handle the operations. So if something breaks, an outage is reported, my team and I will jump on it and put out the outage to keep the lights on. So it's 24/7. We have a follow the sun approach. So that's why we have a large team in Penang, Malaysia, some representatives in Ukraine, and a large percentage in United States. So we do try to follow the sun the best we can.
With the footprint you guys have, you have to.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's necessary. So what brings you to the QSC Qualys show?
Well, we've been using Qualys for about 9 years at Jabil. When I came on board to Jabil in 2015, we were using it. So I've been using it for about 7 years now. And we've built up a really good partnership with Qualys. And they invited me out to talk about how their agent software has benefited us and reduced risk, which is a great thing.
Absolutely. And and that was a big look. I've also been in the information security business a long time. The move to an agent to do scanning. So once upon a time, we used to have host-based scanning and network-based scanning, right?
Yeah.
And that network-based scan gave you that, eye in the sky, bird,
Yes.
hacker's eye view. Agent-based scanning was something different for host-based scanning.
Yep.
And it was kind of never the twain shall meet. But then someone put peanut butter in the chocolate, right? and we realized, hey, this isn't a bad idea because I want to get both views. I want that 360-degree view.
It's funny you mention that because that's what I'm going to be speaking about tomorrow is we have taken a hybrid approach to vulnerability management scanning because there are certain things that cannot have an agent that the appliance scanning works optimal for.
Right.
Then you also have things that the agent works even better because you have real-time scanning. We have thresholds set to where instead of some of our CISOs and executive teams would say, hey, get me a vulnerability report. Well, it would take hours to do, and scanning cycles would take sometimes a week for some of our larger manufacturing plants that have maybe over 10 to 20,000 assets, whereas now with an agent, the manifest
Polling the agent.
every 4 hours it says, hey, I have a new vulnerability, send it. If nothing after 4 hours, you're good to go. Why that's effective is because real time. So when Log4j and Print Nightmare came out, so many security professionals, if they didn't go agent based, you're like, okay, well, my scan's gonna finish maybe in 3 days. Tell me what CISO, security professional, can
Sleeps
wait
those 3 days.
can wait 72 hours and go, okay, we'll see what happens. You gotta have close to real time as possible information on your assets and the security status. So that's why it's benefited us and we've driven risk down.
Absolutely. To me, this story here is part of this whole movement to what continuous security, right? We can't afford to say, well, boss, when I did a snapshot 2 weeks ago, this is what it showed, right?
Yes.
When something like a Log4j, that was unknown, or, that was last year's war,
Yeah.
whatever the next one is going
Yeah.
to be. We need that information continuously in near real time.
And that's why we partnered with Qualys and are very happy with the product because I think it, like anything, the security, as you said, you came from security background as well. The company and the status of vulnerability management in 2015, when I started at Jabil, is light years different now.
Oh, yeah.
Old methods of old detections, and as you said, well, we'll get a report to you soon. I don't think companies can afford that anymore because of ransomware attacks, the complication of things that are out there. You gotta have a tool that can empower you to get as close to real time because that's how you respond. And I remember being in the office when, I forgot what it's called, the ransomware attack that locked the machines was 2017. I forgot what the...
Not Heartbleed.
Petya? I think it was Petya.
Yeah, Petya.
Yeah. When Petya came out, it was a Friday afternoon, and I was like, oh my God.
They always come out on
we,
Friday
We,
afternoon.
we got P1, P2 calls, and you're almost like, wow, how come we couldn't detect certain things like that sooner? And that's where the agent's helping us out.
No doubt the agent part of that is huge. The other thing in what you were talking about here that we can't afford, how the things have changed, quite frankly, the speed of business has changed, right? When you're updating applications multiple times a day, when the average lifespan of a container, if you're using containerized apps, is something like 5 or 7 seconds, right? When
Sure.
you can't afford to tell me what you scanned yesterday.
Right.
Because stuff changed today.
Yep.
And with that speed of business, they're not going to wait for you. They're going to, if you don't have that, it's full speed ahead, damn the torpedoes, right? They're not waiting for your vulnerability report.
Well, plus, in manufacturing, okay, time is money.
Absolutely.
Like I know
It's
you
of
can
the
say that for a
essence.
lot of companies
No,
too.
no, but it really is.
So if you look at an assembly line, okay, and let's just say we have servers that control a widget maker, whatever you want to call it. If that is compromised, a subnet of servers goes down that happen to control an electronic arm or something that cuts a diagram or whatnot, If that's down, we are contracted to these companies that we have to get so many
Deliver.
widgets out the door. If we do not meet those contractual obligations, why do you want to do business with Jabil? Go do it with somebody else.
There's other
So that's why time is money. And if we get a Petya or a Print Nightmare 2.0 or something like that, we know about it by using dashboards, by proactive scanning, real-time thresholds. Hey, I might not be able to tackle it immediately, but I can be in the ballpark instead of waiting
Well, I can
2
start
weeks.
mitigating.
Yeah,
Right? I may not
absolutely.
be able to get all the patches out. I may have to test,
Yeah, of course.
but I can mitigate.
And when my CISO comes to me and says, "Hey, by the way, are you aware of the new threat?" We can say, "Yes, sir. We pulled up the CVE.
Right.
We have information, and I can get you a quantity of that, and I can at least get you an idea of the scope."
What we're dealing with.
Absolutely.
I agree, man. And that's where security's heading. And quite frankly, look, I've been in this vulnerability space for a long time. That's the difference between where we were 10 years ago, 7 years ago, and today.
Yeah.
It is that real-time, continuous. We're not fixing everything immediately. I don't want to
Right.
blow smoke up anybody,
Right.
But we have much more insight, real time,
Yeah.
into our posture.
And I think it breaks down, what we're working at Jabil is it's 1-2 punch. There's vulnerability management, which is your detection, and then there's vulnerability remediation.
Right.
And there are different focuses, SLAs when it comes to that, so, it is a different beast.
Absolutely. How do you spell Jabil?
Jabil.
And it's at jabil.com?
Yes, sir.
All right. You check it out. Chris, thanks for stopping by.
Absolutely.
Sounds like you're going to have a great presentation tomorrow.
Looking forward to it. If you're in town for
I'm
tomorrow
here.
till
We're
about
here
11
tomorrow.
o'clock,
If we're
pop
not
in.
busy doing these, I will.
Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Chris Ong from Jabil here at Qualis's QSC 2022. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. We're back live in Vegas for Qualys's QSC 2022. One of our favorite events to cover. We get to meet some really interesting people, and the security conversations are top notch. I hope we're going to have one here because Qualys recently announced a new cloud security solution that I want to talk about regarding. It has some cloud native functionality. We're going to get into it. I want to introduce you to Parag. Help me with your last name, Parag.
Bajaria.
Parag Bajaria. And Parag, welcome and thank you. Thanks for your help on your name, but thank you for sitting here with us today.
Love to do that.
So Parag, introduce yourself if you don't mind to our audience.
Definitely. Hi, name is Parag Bajaria. I am VP of Product Management at Qualys. Been at Qualys for around 2 years now. Interestingly, Sumedh and I, when we connected, when I was joining, right, this was the vision that we laid out, so it's kind of realization of that vision. Previous to joining Qualys, have worked in various startups, one being CloudKnox, which was just recently acquired by Microsoft, and a bunch of other cybersecurity startups. I just feel like I love security, and there's always exciting things happening.
It's interesting. I tell people all the time, if you're passionate about what you do, it comes through to people and they get passionate, right? If your job or what you do for a living is like pushing rope uphill, A, you're not a happy person, but B, people see that too and they sense it sort of. So I'm happy to see your passion about working on security. So let's jump right into it. Qualys made an announcement. I believe you were making the announcement here at
Yes.
the QSC show today. I don't want to steal the story. You tell them.
Look, I think while we made this big announcement, right, but the announcement is not about one more thing that you want to do for cloud security. Actually, what we are going the opposite of let's simplify cloud security, because with cloud native security, we have done this acronym jargon, CWPP, CIEM, CSPM, IAC, and what we are losing is that by having these kinds of acronym-driven conversations, right, we're forgetting what customer use cases we are solving, because we need to solve the security problem. These acronyms don't matter at the end of the day, right? So with Total Cloud, what we are trying to do is how can we simplify your journey into cloud security by focusing on what are the important use cases that you need to solve, right? And let's look at those important use cases. Let us provide you cloud native solutions. When we say cloud native, right, there's no magic that we are doing here. Cloud native, all that means is that we are utilizing the cloud service provider APIs to do some orchestration, right? So let's take an example of agent. Today, when you use Qualys agent, right, and you deploy, you have to make sure that it's installed on the virtual machine that you're going to deploy. But in the cloud, we can completely automate that by inserting the agent automatically, right? So that's all it is. Being cloud native is nothing new per se. Yes, we are doing some few new things, but let's simplify. We want you to not focus on orchestration of security. We want to focus on what are the results of the security.
Right.
Hopefully that gives you a context.
No, it does. Look, I think you almost have to go up another couple thousand feet. I think one of the things that's developed around cloud security look, I remember when cloud security became a very big thing at RSA conference in maybe 2005. All of a sudden, everyone wanted to know, well, what's your cloud security strategy? What are you doing around cloud security? Some people had a strategy, some didn't. But what evolved is it was almost like I have one security here for on-premise. I'm going to scan for vulnerabilities on my infrastructure and so forth. But that strategy, those tools, I had a different thing for cloud because, well, the cloud provider did some of it for me. I didn't have to worry about the infrastructure and all of this. I had SaaS-based third-party apps. And then this whole so-called cloud native stack came, right? So the cloud, when I first recognized it, it was a hypervisor situation, right? The cloud provider had the hardware, they gave you, it was a hypervisor, and then you built on top of the hypervisor.
Yep.
Well, now, this new stack sometimes has the hypervisor, sometimes not. It's container-based, it's Kubernetes, you talk about orchestration. And Kubernetes has some interesting security built into it.
Correct.
Yeah, and you know, the whole idea of scanning containers, while it's not totally foreign to the kind of scanning we've been doing for 20 years, it's a little different. You got to scan the payload, you got to scan the container configuration and so forth. But but there's a whole stack. There's the service mesh and all of the other things that are going into this. The one thing I know companies don't need right now is yet more solutions. I got a solution for this, a solution for that, another solution for this, and whatever's coming next, right? No one wants, I think people want a unified security solution. And that's what this kind of total cloud, this is kind of what I see with it.
I agree with you, right? This is about seeing your picture, right, in one place, right? So you talked about container, and there are so many components, and then Kubernetes security. It's fine. I mean, all those primitives need to exist to ensure security, but you need an overlay layer, right, that can simplify some of this, right? And one of the things that with container world has been very, very good from a security vendor's perspective, right? In the container world, we have started to do a lot of things shift left.
Yeah.
Right? So before we kind of get into the mess, once you deploy stuff, it's messy.
Like operating
because
on a
now
live
you need to clean
patient.
up, right?
Right,
You need
yeah.
to mop up.
Yeah.
Right? And change tracking and all the hassles. Somebody needs to now report on it. Why do all of that? Right? So runtime security is like your backup security, right? Clean it up early on, right? And that's where, again, this total cloud vision is, let's simplify security, right? Let's not introduce more things that, hey, let's do this one more piece, right? Let's get it right up front. And then wherever, our runtime security is only backup, right? And same goes like now Kubernetes, right? Even Kubernetes can be misconfigured.
Easily.
Unfortunately.
Kubernetes not easy. Let's be clear.
So you must have seen the news of Kubernetes API server being public.
Right.
I mean, really, if you want to get on news for being hacked, do you want to get on news for being hacked on some simple configuration? No. Or rather,
I mean,
you would rather not get on the news, but if you do,
let it be the best hacker in the world got in, right? James Bond or someone.
Exactly. Something that I can write a book about. Maybe it will be produced into Mr. Robot 2.
Yeah, that would be nice. But yeah, you're 100% right. It's true about that. I think one of the other things about this is the whole kind of infrastructure as code, ephemeral nature of this infrastructure where, look, I don't even want to patch my containers. I just destroy them and put out new containers, right? We just redeploy stuff. It takes place here, left, not at the not when it's already deployed and out there live. I'm just going to fix it here, push this out, and get rid of the old, right? It's a different mindset.
The good news here is containers were made with the mindset of immutability.
Right, that's what I was saying. I said ephemeral. It's
Yeah.
immutable
All right.
infrastructure.
So which is a great thought. Unfortunately, there's some shift and lift going on even in container world, which means like some of our customers are still going through that journey of immutability. All right, they're still installing Puppet agents in containers and downloading software, which is like it defeats the purpose. But that's fine. We want to support them in their journey.
In their journey.
Right? But the immutability concept is a great concept, and it's actually percolating back even in the virtual machine world, right? Now more and more of our customers are saying that we don't want to patch, right? Even our virtual machines. We want to rehydrate them, right? Which means if I detect something, I bring it down, I push the new image in, right? And that's the thinking around that shift left facilitation, right? That now, if I look at your Terraform template, right, and I can see that you're referring to an AMI, which I know has vulnerabilities, I can tell
Fix
you,
it right here
stop it, fix it,
and
then
redeploy.
Exactly.
So look, it's easy for you and I to sit here and say, why didn't they think of this before, right? What, but it's a rather simple concept, but we just didn't have that capability. But this is a game-changing, I think, capability of don't fix it, replace it. And again, easy to say, but it's not that hard to do with today's technology too. And I think it's the way we have to go.
We have to, and the benefits outweigh any of the, what I would say, not even operational, mindset change, right? Right. Once you get to that mindset, the benefits far outweigh any of the mindset.
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt about it. Because the other nice, what's the reason we don't see more automated patching or remediation? Well, because it's liable to break something. I have to test it first. You know what? It's easy to test it in your dev environment when you're not in production. And so when you push it, it's already been tested. And with automated testing back here, it could be done as it's being developed and done. It really is a
I think it's a
game changer.
mindset change, right? Remediation, you still require remediation. Let's say that a new vulnerability has been released. There is you are exposed to that vulnerability, right? And you want to prevent that exposure while fixes are built.
Right, you want to mitigate that risk until you can.
Right, so
fix
there
it.
is a need for runtime mitigation, not runtime patching per se,
No.
but mitigation, right?
Agreed.
And that is to give you that buffer while you are rebuilding, fixing those issues, and redeploying, right? So in today's world, right, you need to have both the view set. Sometimes I have conversations where customers think they buy into the whole mantra, right? That everything shift left, I'm all secure. Well, not really.
So that is it. So look, in addition to Techstrong TV, right, we operate DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, and Container Journal. So we play. This is our sweet spot. This is our farm, and I think one of the things we've been not me personally, but the industry has been guilty of is we put so much attention and focus and resources into shift left. You can't ignore what's called shift right, right? You can't ignore shift right either, because that's your production environment. If you got a problem there, you could fix it by shifting left, but until you do, it's your neck on the line. And so we can't ignore the right side as we, move this emphasis to shift left.
We can simplify the shift right.
Yes.
That is
because
like,
it's mitigation, not
Exactly.
necessarily remediation. Agreed. Parag, is the solution available now, or when will it be available? How does How does one?
So it's easy. We have a sign up page. The solution is going to be quote unquote in beta end of November.
Okay.
And just like usual, right? I mean, when we release new functionality, right, we have the usual mentality of we're going to start signing our customers in. We build up a pipeline, we get feature feedback and everything, and then we will GA it sometime in Q1. So,
Love it. So that's
easy
the end
rollout.
of November, about two and a half weeks.
So yeah, I mean, it's a very easy sign up form. We have our sales guys who will be following up. Rather, I'm collecting all the data, right? And we are building. We already have actually a set of customers whom we
Been
did
using
this
it.
early preview with, and now we are kind of moving to okay, let's stop bring in other set of customers, and then GA is planned in Q1. So
I love it, and in Q1 we'll have it available. Look, I think it's a great thing. As I said, it's a shifting mindset, but it's if we can make that shift, I think we'll all be better off for it.
let's simplify security, right? Not driven by acronyms, but by use cases.
Yep, I agree. It's one of the reasons I started DevOps.com is I thought it would be a better way of doing security. This whole shift left thing. Anyway, hey, we're live at Qualys QSC. We're in Las Vegas. We've got a few more interviews today, so stick around. right, we're back here in Las Vegas for Qualys QSC 2022. I don't know if you watch, you probably wouldn't remember, but if you watched last year's Qualys QSC, we had this gentleman on. I think you had just recently got into the role. Was it last year?
I was picking up engineering operations.
Yeah. So it's Dilip Bachwani. Bachwani, and actually, you can tell them your role now.
Okay. I'm Dilip Bachwani. I'm heading engineering operations and support at Qualys. I've been at Qualys for over 6 years now.
Yes.
Came to Qualys to initially build its data platforms as we were transitioning as a company from the 4, 5, 6 products we had to the 20 plus products that we have today. It's a different mindset in how you do things.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the amount of products.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, it was really sort of a DevOps transformation where the way these products were developed,
Yes.
and maintained was moving more to a modern infrastructure, microservices, DevOps, less of that waterfall release every
Yes.
or twice a year or what have you. And so let's start there first. How's that transformation been going?
It's coming along really well. We've made a lot of progress. We've largely moved from our monolithic systems to microservices. We have over 300 microservices today.
Whoa.
We have
That's
about
big.
100 platforms running at very large scale. I think last time I was here, I'd shared some numbers, but today, I believe we shared it in our keynote too. But our Elasticsearch clusters have about 13 trillion data points.
Oh my God. That's hyperscale.
That is hyperscale.
Right.
And this is all in-house. We've built our own skill set to run these platforms. But really, it's not the platform so much. Ultimately, it's the value that you build on top of the platforms, right? It's the products and capabilities that we are building that are enabling our customers in their journeys.
Well, so I take it the platforms enable you, right? Because you could think about building scalable applications that service thousands, tens of thousands of customers. But if you don't have a platform to support them, it's useless, right?
Yeah.
It's shoveling sand against the tide. So it's important, I think, that
very.
To have that base. But that now becomes the enabler for all of these great products, and it kind of boggles my mind because I know Qualys for 23 years, whatever it's been, 24 years. And, they had a vulnerability scanner. And now there are how many different products? It's 20-something?
If you look at individual products, it's over 20. But what we've also done is we've said, how do we combine some of these products and enable customers on their journeys? So as an example, when you take vulnerability management, you said Qualys had a scanner. Yes, we did vulnerability management. We had a scanner. We had agents, right?
Yes.
We have about 80 million agents out there now. But it's not just about running the scan. It's also about visibility to assets, right? So what we've done now is, as an example with Qualys VMDR, you get full asset visibility across your active, managed, unmanaged assets in your data center, public cloud, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, anything, container assets. Get that visibility. Then you run the scan. Then after you run the scan, what do you prioritize on? What's important from a risk standpoint for your organization? That's the true risk that we talk about now.
Right.
And then we've integrated patching into the workflows. So you can have automated zero-touch patching, right? So when you look at everything I just mentioned, you can look at those as, there are 4 or 5 different modules, or you can look at it as VMDR, right, which is the vulnerability management. How do you run the whole program? And that's what is coming together now. What we announced today with Total Cloud as an example is another example of that. To say, how do we enable customers as they're on their cloud journeys? So instead of getting caught up in the buzzwords of CNAP and CIEM and this and that, what do they really want, right? And what they want is, as they are moving from the data center to the cloud, as they are moving to container workloads, how are we moving with them on that journey, but how are we making it easy for them? Because the problem domain still stays. You still need good hygiene, you still need compliance, you still need the right kind of configuration, areas that we are very good at, very strong at, right? And that's what we are enabling now, right? We have the products, but we are packaging them also in a manner where customers can say, well, I think this gives me a complete holistic picture, a single unified view, and to your earlier point, built on a single platform, right? We have a truly unified platform. I tell this to everybody, right? It's the underlying infrastructure and the data is the same, and that is enabling.
So that's the beauty of a platform too.
Correct.
You know, there's an argument to be made of the 20-something products that Qualys has, and it's not just Qualys, of any of these products. Products themselves can be very much become features. It's just a feature. And we could, and what's today's product is tomorrow's feature. It gets subsumed within a bigger platform. And it's truly the platform. Because once you have that platform, you can keep adding features, whether you want to call them a separate product, how you package it, sell it. It's more features we're adding on top of the platform. And so that, again, the enablement of it. Qualys is a great example of it now.
I came here to build it. I can tell you Qualys is a phenomenal example of it.
That, absolutely.
One single platform that can give you that breadth of coverage, that breadth of capabilities.
At scale.
Right? At scale, at big scale.
And that, that's something I think that separates Qualys from any of the others. We don't have a lot of time, but I wanted to just quickly touch on Total Cloud. We had Prashad here earlier, just right before you. And it's his baby. You could tell his pride and passion in it. But from your point of view, what do you see with it?
See, I mean, it ties back to a little bit on what I was saying earlier. Organizations, as they're moving from the data center to the cloud, right? So when you move to the cloud, you want to do workload protection. You want to do infrastructure and entitlement, right? You want to look at your posture. And what has happened is for each of these things, now there are different terms and there are different products and different vendors trying to sell each one of these, right? And it's making, at least in my view, I think Parag shared the same sentiment, it's making everything more noisy. Right, and what we are trying to do with Total Cloud is we are saying, well, let's keep the buzzwords aside. What problem do we really want to solve, right? We want to make it easier for our customers as they are moving to the cloud to understand what their posture is. What do they need to do from a hygiene standpoint to take care of that posture so they are safer in their environment, right? And that's where we launched Total Cloud. And a big piece of that is FlexScan, where we are saying you can scan in different ways. So as soon as an asset comes up, you can do an API-based scan, which is quick, right? But for that same asset, you can also deploy an agent and you can get a more comprehensive continuous scan that is happening. For that same asset, we can also do a network-based scan because there are some vulnerabilities and checks that you can only do outside
from that third party,
as an example, right? You can also do a snapshot-based scan where you just take a snapshot and then you do the evaluation after. And what we will do is we will do all these scans, we will process the data on our platform, and then we'll give you this comprehensive view of what your security posture is.
Across the whole thing.
Across the whole thing, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's what people want. First of all, they don't want one solution for on-prem, another solution for cloud, another solution for cloud native, another solution for SaaS or endpoint. They want a platform, that's one platform for security.
And I can tell you that because while I'm responsible for engineering at Qualys, I'm responsible for all global cloud operations. So I'm a user of what we do.
Okay. You're eating your own dog food.
We have FedRAMP authorization. We have our platforms that run in the data center on bare metal, on virtualized infra, in public clouds, in all public clouds. So when I look at my own security posture, for me, whether I'm running in the data center, whether I'm running on containers, whether I'm running on the cloud, I don't particularly care. I still want to know what my vulnerability posture is across my footprint.
Agreed.
What my compliance posture is across my footprint. And what should I prioritize and focus on across my footprint, because ultimately it's the weakest link that you should focus on, or the risk for your environment that you should focus on, right? And that's where the unified platform, the unified view obviously is making a difference.
Excellent. Dilip, we have to bring our next guest on.
Okay.
Pleasure seeing you again.
Thank you so much.
Amazing,
Always good to be
great
here.
stuff.
Yeah.
We'll continue this conversation.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
All right, we're here in Las Vegas. We have one more interview for today, so stay tuned. It's coming up in just one moment. Hey everyone, we're back here. We're going to wrap up our day one coverage of Qualys QSC. It's been a great day. We've probably done, I don't know, a dozen, maybe more interviews. Hope to give you a flavor of what goes on here. I just want to remind you all again, you know, Qualys puts these on. It's open to anyone who wants to register. Probably too late to come on down to Vegas for this right now, but if you want to catch the next one, it's a great security conference because it's not just Qualys and the Qualys people, it's the people you meet here that you get a chance to interact with. It gives me a good lead into our next guest. His name's Nathan Rawlings. Nathan is with Elevant
Elevance Health.
Elevance Health. He's actually speaking tomorrow. And before we get into what he's speaking about, Nathan, first of all, say hello.
Hello.
Give people a little background on you.
Yeah, so I'm Nate Rawlings with Elevance Health, formerly Anthem, a whole health company with plans across Medicare, Medicaid, and commercial. We have 14 Anthem Blue Cross state plans.
Yes.
So, but we do a lot more as well. We do pharmacy, behavioral, specialty health, digital platforms, right? And so we've really, I don't want to say reinvented ourselves, but are working to take healthcare all the way to the communities in which we live. So my job's super important there because I'm the Senior Director of Vulnerability Management, Secure Configuration, and Cloud Security Posture Management.
Yep.
And so I take that very seriously because we're protecting the systems and data.
Serious job.
Right, that protect the folks in those communities. So glad to be here and looking forward to talking about it.
Thanks for that, Nate. You know, and I'll tell you something, it's the kind of information you have. I mean, obviously there's HIPAA, people's personal health information.
Sure.
But there's also, there's trade information, right? There's, I mean, such sensitive kind of data. No one wants to be tomorrow's headline.
That's right.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so this is something, this is a job, right?
Yes, absolutely.
You know, I've been in security 25, 30 years myself, man, right? And I started security companies, I've been in the industry.
You mean you're 30 years old, right?
Yeah, something like that. But, you know, it's been a long, strange trip, as they say. But one of the kind of mythical beings, unicorns in security, was trying to show ROI.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man, I remember doing an ROI calculator for a company I started back in the early 2000s, you know, of why vulnerability management, you know, would provide ROI. And I can't tell you how many people laughed at us.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
You're talking about ROI security tomorrow. Why shouldn't we laugh at you?
And not just because I like unicorns, I guess, but because I think ROI, and when we look at it in just the security lens, it is difficult to quantify and explain and articulate. But when you look at it through the lens of your partner, right, we know that there's a finite number of hours in the day, and there's even less hours in the day that our friends in IT and the business are working, and an even smaller amount of time in which they're working to maintain those applications and systems, remediate vulnerabilities on those systems, patch, rehydrate images in the cloud. So if we can maximize the risk reduction for the hours that they spend on those activities, then we are improving the return on investment for the time they're investing in doing those things. So
I like that.
Yeah, so that's what we're focused on. And, you know, as part of the product advisory board and with the partnership we have with Qualys, that's a lot of our messaging is like, Qualys is my tool, and in terms of, when I say that's the royal my, because I've got a great team behind me. But it gives me the security insights that I need to understand the risks of the environment, but I have to think about the folks that are actually doing the work, doing the remedial activities, doing the corrective actions.
And their time is money, man.
It is exactly that, right? And so if I'm not thinking about that, then I'm not going to be able to reduce the amount of risk. Because at the end of the day, and you talked about sensitive data, things like HIPAA, PCI, and there's folks talking about it today, I don't get to mandate what my service level agreements are, right? But I do get to prioritize and the vulnerabilities and the actions and the security exposures that need to be fixed first so that we can reduce the amount of risk. And I do get to provide the information in a way that they can consume so they can be action oriented in the way that they address them. So we built that, and not through just that action, right? But it's the willingness to understand their perspective and drive that. So, and I want to tell you why we came to that, Alan. I came into the vulnerability management role at Elevance a couple years ago, right? It'll be 2 years in December. And I looked across the landscape and I was like, we got 18 subsidiaries and every cloud environment out, or CSP out there, and 7,000 applications. I'm like, boy, this is going to be a big job. How are we going to do it, right? And so, when I talk tomorrow, I'm not, contrary to the pleasing points of the Qualys folks, I'm not going to talk about how Qualys can solve all your problems, but I will tell them how we've used Qualys to solve some of our problems, right?
And I think that's the key, right? I just had a conversation with Dilip, who, the platform, he built the Qualys platform.
Absolutely.
I think that's the key to this whole thing. You can't expect Qualys or any other company to come by and say, poof, your security problems are gone, your vulnerabilities are done. At the end of the day, they're tools.
Absolutely.
The tools are only as a lesson I learned growing up. The tool makes the man, but they're only as good as the man or person, woman, person using them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so just because you have Qualys or a Qualys-like thing doesn't magically mean your stuff went away. Now you got your work.
That's
At least you know what work it is.
That's absolutely right. So we were with the Qualys agent deploying that VMDR. So we were a long-time Qualys shop. Mm-hmm. Traditional network appliances, scanning of frequencies and downtime. We deployed agents to 95% of our systems, over 400,000 systems that could accept an agent. We now reduced vulnerability detection time by 4,200%, 42 times.
Wow.
So we're finding vulnerabilities every 4 hours on 95% of a Fortune 20 company's systems. We increased the time to communicate a vulnerability by 7 times. So on average, we're finding vulnerabilities and communicating them within ServiceNow and our other workflows within a day.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. I think back to my days on the other side of this camera. Where the average mean time to remediate was 90 plus days. It's crazy. That was crazy.
Right?
That was crazy. This is what it's supposed to be.
That's right. And so we're still working on driving down that mean time to remediation, but really the whole concept of ROI came to me like, my guys are frustrated. We've deployed the agents. We're finding them fast. We've got a risk-based methodology that's best in class in the industry. We're communicating them through ServiceNow and working with ServiceNow to improve their platform. But we have to start looking at those other things that can drive down that mean time to remediation. If we look at it as a stack bar, mean time to detect, mean time to communicate, and then mean time to remediate, if I told you we're communicating our vulnerabilities in a day and an SLA is 30 days, and you missed that SLA, what were you doing for 29 days?
That's what you got. So that brings up my pet peeve. Look, we've had companies touting automated remediation, automated patching, automated configuration, automated remediation where I'm changing network paths to isolate certain kinds of traffic that could be exploited and so forth. We've had this available in the industry long time, 15 plus years.
Absolutely.
There's a tremendous reluctance to move towards automation.
Yeah.
It's like, and you ask people why, and they're like, well, I don't want to break anything.
That's exactly.
Okay, better to be insecure, better to have this gaping hole over here
right.
that someone's going to drive a truck through.
And I think that's about creating cyber awareness, Alan. It's, what's funny, and if you do a little Socratic method with the folks and you say, okay, you don't want to deploy that patch because that system's critical and you need it, right? Well,
it gets taken down.
It's exactly right.
That's the whole thing. It's illogical.
Exactly. What's the larger risk? And with the different means of deploying patches and folks being able to do so in production, quickly roll back, we've got to bring again our partners in and show them that automated remediation is going to further increase the ROI for the time that they're spending.
Right? And that's a key piece of it. But in my mind, So that's not a technology. The technology's there. I think Qualys has a great solution for it.
Absolutely.
I think that's more of a mindset.
I agree.
Needs to get changed.
I agree.
Sometimes changing mindsets is a lot harder than just building code.
I agree. And we all live in the Missouri state, the show me. Exactly,
Yep.
right? And so I think we have to be able to demonstrate that and take a step back from the security practitioner lens and have a seat in their chair for a second and say, let me show you how our tools can help you. And we've talked a lot over the last couple of days. We get a lot of value out of the Qualys cybersecurity asset management capability, and guess who else gets a lot of value out of it? IT, our enterprise architecture groups, a lot of the folks that are looking for those same asset details and things like that. So let's bring them in, and just like I'm asking Qualys and the other technology providers to work with each other, integrate your tools to make better security posture for our entire environment, we need to be doing those same things within our organization.
Internally. And that's where the ROI really kicks in.
That's right. Better,
Right?
we're better together.
You got it, man. Hey, Nate, it sounds like it's going to be a great session tomorrow.
I hope so.
Looking forward to it. But more importantly, man, keep fighting the good fight. It sounds like you're on your game, man.
We're trying to.
And Elevant's in a good place with it.
I appreciate it.
All right. Hey, for people who want to get more information, it's elevanthealth.com?
Elevancehealth.com.
Excellent. All right. Hey, that's going to wrap up day one here at Las Vegas. We will be back tomorrow, I think around 10:30 Pacific time. Check the live stream. Until then, hey, stay safe. Enjoy. We're out. Bye-bye.